this for 7 years. And Canadians, we accept the Canadians and from all around. We've been meeting for about 7 years. Every month we have a different speaker, and we always have fun, we always learn something. And in fact, we've got some of our speakers, former speakers here. We've got Steve Lumberg, who's talked to the group, and I think Mike Bowling is somewhere, he's talked to the group, and many others. So we always have, who else? Oh, and of course Dave Scott. Dave Scott, yes, he's always here. So tonight I'm going to keep the formalities brief because we've got a special program tonight, and I don't want, we normally do some introductions of newcomers. We've got a couple of introductions that I want to do later to some special guests that we've got here. But tonight, really, we're celebrating I guess, the Allied forces. We're not just celebrating US veterans, but worldwide. Whether some of us in this group have served on the Western Front, some of us have served in the Pacific. So we've got an esteemed group here tonight. But of course, I don't want to take any time away from our speaker tonight. And so I'm going to have Bob Allison come up and do the introductions. But before we do that, Mark wants to take a moment.
I think under the circumstances, it would be a great time if we all stood and said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. It's a little flag, but you can see it over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Bob, it's all yours.
What a great honor that I was asked by Mark to introduce my dear friend Cal Atwood tonight. It's also quite humbling because he's quite a man. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a degree in engineering, but I've always been a big follower of history, and I've read a lot of history books. And I think most of you have probably read the book, I think it was 1998, from Tom Brokaw, when he described the greatest generation. Our country was involved in a war on both sides of the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, and the country had to make a lot of sacrifices. We were a new fledgling, relatively new nation then, and sacrifices ran all through the United States, where people had to do with less food. Women were working in factories making ammunition, ships, and tanks. And then we had the guys that went out there and fought the war. Cal Atwood was one of those guys, and one of the greatest of that generation. He started his life in Vermont, in I think it was Rutledge, right, Cal?
Yes.
And he dropped out of high school, or were you thrown out? I can't remember just how that went.
Dropped out and I was kicked out.
Okay, and he was kicked out both at the same time, see? So then he joined the Marine Corps at the age of 17. And in February of 1945, the Marines, 3 battalions of Marines went into Iwo Jima. And Iwo Jima was an island that the U.S. wanted to get because it needed to put an air base there, so the planes returning from Japan, in case they couldn't make it any further, could land there. The Japanese had 23,000 soldiers that were dug into that island, in caves and tunnels, and it was a very, very difficult task to try to get them out. So they gave the job to the Marines. Cal parachuted out of an airplane into Iwo Jima, along with other people in his group, and the battle went on for about 30 days, I think, before we finally won the war, or won the battle in Iwo Jima. And they had 23,000 Japanese. There was 1,000 prisoners taken, and the rest of them had to be killed. In Cal's group, I think this is correct, for every 100 guys that parachuted into difficult place. Only 5 of them got out, and he was one of them. So we have with us tonight a guy that's one of the greatest of that generation. He was wounded in that battle on Iwo Jima and went through a recovery process in Guam, and then I believe he went on to San Francisco. And then he returned back to Vermont and finished off his high school degree, and he was given an Outstanding Student Award, and then proceeded on a very wonderful career in education. He went to Lawrence College in Wisconsin and got his undergraduate degree there. And then he went on to Columbia, where he got a master's degree. Columbia, I think probably even in those days, was a fairly liberal institution. None of that rubbed off on Cal, by the way, so you don't have to worry about that. And then he went on with a very distinguished career in education. He was head of the business school for University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. He also went to Istanbul, Turkey, where he ran an American school over there. There was Pembroke County Day School, that I think was your first education assignment. So he had this wonderful career in education. Ended up at Emory in Atlanta, Georgia, where the lucky guy Cal meets the most wonderful, beautiful woman in the world, sitting here to my right, Miss Caroline Atwood. For sure, Cal has outrun his coverage on this one. And they got married while he was at Emory in Atlanta, and then they came down to the island. Cal had a company that was basically doing executive search work for I believe just the education industry. And he's been a wonderful island resident. He's contributed to so many wonderful causes on here. He's been the Toys for Tots program, the museum golf tournament. He's been a very active member of the museum and a lot of other things here on the island. His charitable contributions have been as wonderful as the contributions that he made defending our country. So tonight, in a little bit ahead of the presentation that you're all waiting for, we are going to make a small presentation. We have a group here on the island called the Amelia Island Marauders. Okay, it's a group of about 20 guys. We do a lot of fun things. We contribute to a lot of charitable things with golf tournaments and that kind of thing. We're very active in the bar and restaurant business on the island, contributing to the and we have a good time. And so we wanted to make a presentation tonight. And if I could ask Alan Robertson to come up, please, and Mr. Cal. Why don't we do it over here at the bar? You don't have to move. You stay there. By the way, Cal is an honorary marauder, and his nickname is Jarhead. We all have nicknames trying to keep our identities as low-key as possible.
First off, a combat vet, Cal, another combat vet, is going to give him a cap, Marine, retired, Bob Colucci.
It's a retired Marine hat.
And in honor of our marauders, Steve Shutt, a.k.a. Nuke Man, is going to present the Marauder Cap.
That is blood coming off the clubs there. And Jarhead on the back.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And finally, we all have logos. To my left here is Bob Allison, he's Iceman. Here is Arrow Man, 1/3 Cherokee, and founder of or developer of the Pound Puppy. Gambling Man, Dennis Harvin. Hitman, Bob Colucci from New York, and Jarhead.
The special frame logo for Jarhead, our favorite Marine. So when you guys leave the meeting tonight, you can't let anybody know what any of these code names are, okay? It's all very top secret. With no further ado, I'd like to bring up Cal Atwood. It's kind of humbling to speak before he does, because he's also a very good orator, as you'll find out.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I was going to tell you about being a 6'6" quarterback at the University of Wisconsin and playing in the Rose Bowl. But Bob Allison is here, and so I can't tell that story because he's the guy that I was going to emulate and imitate. Well, now that I'm up here, what I want to do is to tell you that we have as a speaker this evening my wife, who is going to talk to you about roses. She loves to grow roses, and she loves to talk about roses, so here you are, Caroline. This quarterback's not going to work, and I guess my wife's not going to fill in for me. Well, I guess I'll have to try and do something myself. I'm pretty sure you all know that the invasion of Iwo Jima began 72 years and 2 days ago. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and whether or not I'm the luckiest man in the world. And I came to you this evening because I think it's time that Lou Gehrig became the second most lucky man in the world, and that I became the first. And I want you, if you agree with the brief that I am putting forth before you this evening, for you to determine whether or not I should replace Gehrig as the luckiest man in the world. Now, I never wore the pinstripes. I never hit home runs. I played a lot of baseball, but I was mostly singles and got caught a lot stealing second base. Gehrig thinks he's the luckiest man in the world, but I'd like to tell you about me. I probably appreciate this island as much as you all, and maybe more. And I'm in love with a bunch of the golf courses around, including the one right out there. Played a lot of golf out there, and I would be a very wealthy man were it not for the money that I lost out there over at the golf club of Amelia Island and back here at Long Point. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, we played for $2 a hole often, and it was $36 was the most you could lose. I'd come away losing $50, $60, and I don't understand how that happened. If one of you mathematicians, maybe Nuke Man, would help me out with that, why, I would be most appreciative. Well, I'm in love with a bunch of the roses that grow in our garden and our huge blue hydrangeas, soon to come. And I probably appreciate the crazy obstreperousness of our marauders as much as anyone. And they tried to become a marauder, but they wouldn't let me in. I mean, they would make you an honorary marauder, but man, you don't qualify. And I'd like to get that explained to me sometime.
You're overqualified.
Yeah, well,
Overqualified. Different level.
don't think I wasn't pretty, what's that word again? Peed off about that one. And another thing that I'd like to do, they're crazy, the marauders. They're so obstreperous, more obstreperous than anybody in the whole world. But they're also irrepressible, and that's kind of like the crazy camaraderie of the Marine Corps, right, Hank?
Absolutely.
And we have to be intrigued and love Dave Scott's blog. And I've heard many great things about the EABC, but I may never forgive my dear friend Chuck Singleton, Blade Man, for telling you stories about me and for getting me here instead of my wife. I have so many things that I love that are part of my book, like the K-Bar right there, like the wonderful Marine Corps shield, which my wife petty-pointed for me. I love it. The sulfuric ash from Iwo Jima, that island that I escaped to this paradise. How lucky you get to be. The actual statistics on Iwo were 6,821 men who were killed, 67 in my outfit, and 95% of us became casualties. I got hit that far away from my reproductive organs and in several other places. And my wife will tell you how many grandchildren we have and great-grandchildren. I can't even keep track of what has occurred in that category. And then you have to look at where's that photograph of Carol Ann?
It's behind something, thank goodness.
Would you put it up front there, please, Steve?
Steve took that.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. About time you did something for me. You're the one that got me in trouble up here. But if you're married to a girl like that, that makes you the luckiest man in the world. And not only did I get hit that far from my reproductive organs, I had a bullet go through my helmet, straight through from front to back, and everybody kidded me about that for a long, long time. I have a conundrum between Lou and me, and I'm hoping you might resolve it. I was told by a friend that it's not a good thing for a man to be 92 years old and to be hopelessly, shamelessly, and inextricably in love. I can't even look at her sometimes when I start misting up. But I'm an old Marine, so I don't do that much. I'll lay a little more of my feelings about this girl, and I would like to do it in a poem. And it would tell you how I found her, and it's the first poem in a book that I wrote about her, and I probably have 200 poems about her. The only things I can write about are her and the Marine Corps. I wrote a little bit about this island, but it's always the Marine Corps or Carol Ann. This poem goes like this. Found her right there in a tiny gourmet restaurant in Lindbergh Square, sitting in a bamboo wicker chair, waiting for me. Blind date. Never saw her before. She was wearing a hat half as large as the restaurant. She started laughing at me right away. Laughing with me too. She watched with a strange clarity, my heart falling right to my knees. Just saying hello. Such a quiet little place. I don't remember music, no candlelight, no shadows, stuff like that. Just giant trees, cedars, and redwoods crashing quietly. dismembering themselves as they fell near us on the restaurant floor. My heart swirled in my toes by then. But being an old Marine, Hank, I just got right up after lunch, marched straight out of there, pretending to be still stalwart, even though I couldn't find my car. But what I knew then, and still know more than 30 years from then, I ain't going hunting no more. I think I'll read you one more poem. Maybe that was then, and this is now. I don't even know if she has heard this poem, so it might be the first time she's heard it. Since I just wrote it last week and I haven't even heard it myself. and I'm not even sure I want to. I never saw a girl like her. She walks him toward the stars and keeps him filled with ice cream and shields away the dark. She knows about the many boys that he left on the ground, who sent him on the living road and gave away their bones. So she wears scarves of laughter and giggles with the girls. She knows about the afterworld, the here and now, the scars. I watch her down the street, down the aisles of life, and marvel at her greatness as she smiles above the crowd.
I thought this was about Eva Jingler.
You'd be quiet over there, you wouldn't come up and talk about roses. I just want to read a few names for you. You have many ethnicities in the European American Business Club. And there are 67 members, I told you, who died. I just want to read a few names so that you get the feeling of who they were. And I'm not going to read, I'm just going to read a few of their names, but their names just absolutely are a bounty for my brain. PFC Guatano Arcuri, PFC Charles Batchelor, PFC John Beck, PFC Joseph Biozzi, Second Lieutenant James W. Cassidy, Private Frank O. Kaufman, Second Lieutenant Ernest Clark, Corporal Francis P. Corrigan, PFC Joseph Farinella, Private Armando Felix, Corporal John Wilson. Well, I can't read any more of those. Takes care of that little item. But those are the names of the men who fell near me. And just their names is enough to tell you everything that you would ever want to know about them. They were so beautiful, and they were so brave, and there were rivers of blood. Okay, now I'd like to move over to something else. The most reverenced man today in the United States Marine Corps is 4-star General James Mattis, and as you know, he's our Secretary of Defense. And I don't know him, I can't explain you to him, but I gave a talk to a bunch of Marines in Auburn, Alabama, a couple of summers ago, and there were a number of Marines back from Iraq and Afghanistan wearing dress blues and their ribbons. When I talked about him and gave some of the quotations, they were in the back of the room yelling and shouting because they loved this man. And some of his quotations go like this: the first time you blow someone away is not an insignificant event. That said, there are some assholes in the world that just need to be shot. Tells his troops, find the enemy that wants to end this experiment in American democracy and kill every one of them until they are so sick of the killing that they leave us and leave us alone and go where they ought to be and leave our freedoms intact. If you think I have any burning hatred of ISIS, you got it. Marines don't even know how to spell the word defeat. And this man, Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, says, I don't even know how to spell the word failure. And I do, but it's F-A-L-E-Y-O-U-R. You fail, not us. Be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everybody you meet. Then the other side of this man, which I also love, not just the Mad Dog part, and well, there's one more I'll tell you about the Mad Dog part, but he has a thinking part that is so appealing to me. He met with a group of Afghan tribal leaders, and it was in a tent, and he said, I thank you for coming here. I'm so glad to meet with you, and maybe we can solve some of the issues between us. But if you fuck with me, I'll kill you all. Now that's my idea of the man who ought to be our Secretary of Defense and who is. And now you know why the Marines adore him. But he has another side. He's called the warrior monk. He thinks. He has 6,000 books that he moves with him every time he goes to a new station. And he says the most important 6 inches on the battlefield is that between your ears. You're part of the world's most feared and trusted force. Engage your brain before you engage your weapon. No war is over until the enemy says it's over. We may think it's over, but in fact, the enemy gets a vote. Well, maybe that says a little bit about my love of the Marine Corps and my love of a guy like that who gets to be our Secretary of Defense and for whom I have tremendous hopes. Now if I can find 2 more poems here that I want to read to you before I get back to my tango and tonic. Do you know what tango is, by the way? And if you don't, it's a vodka that's made here in America.
Tito.
Pardon?
Tito.
Tito, oh Tito's, yes. I call it tango because I tango double when I have and by the way, if you ever had bartender better than the one you know and that I know. Blade man over there. I want to hear about that bartender because I'd like to have a couple of drinks. All right, two more poems before I get back to my Tito Tango. I believe, and sometimes it seems so real to me, that some of those fellows whose names I couldn't read to you come to visit me. And I think they're at my bar. We have a wonderful armoire. And I have all kinds of beautiful whiskey there. Wonderful brand new bottle that Earl bought me the other evening. I don't know if I would share that with him or not. This poem is called Leatherneck Visitations. Here in this quiet plenitude of life, surrounded by Sweetwater oaks and splendid truth blue hydrangeas and grass plucked free of weeds by slender fingers and orchids taller than my carbine, Marines come wandering here whose blood bled through my hands some 70 years ago. They wonder how I reached these golden beaches after the flaming ones we knew. They laugh at me some, they jest, no envy in their visit here. They come to find the love they missed. The kisses on my lips are meant for me, but also them. Their pictures on the wall and all the others behind my eyes tell them they have every right to come here. Help themselves to beer, to whiskey, the cheese. The Frigidaire is theirs. Books, my uniform, my K-bar on the bar. How honored you come. Keep coming here. Now you come tell me after, later tonight or some other time when we're together, whether or not I'm luckier than Lou Gehrig. I mean, so many things have happened to me, so much magic, and we live on this paradise. The contrast between that sulfuric ash and what this island is today is so enormous, incomprehensible. I want to read one more poem and back to my Tito. I said goodbye to my friends on Ewo in this poem. Might not be able to read it to you, but I'll try. I'm saying goodbye. I never was one to say goodbye. After eating a bowl of ice cream on the hospital ward at Guam, I knew I was back in the squadron of living. But while I stared through April and May at the legs of the white-stocking nurses and their starched behinds, I whispered goodbye to the men of Fox Company and to all the other men in green that we left on the beach at Ewo. I never saw one, I never was one to say goodbye, and so with you. The day you jarheads closed the door of death behind, I heard doors slam on me 1,000 miles away, and overhead planes flew to airports where they'd never land. And autumn struck me then like bullets from the Nambu, gunned me down with light. And winter nights drizzled in me that will never blow away. I never was one to say goodbye. Thank you for listening to me.
Cal, thank you very much. On behalf of the EABC, we want to thank you very much for being our guest speaker tonight. It was absolutely wonderful. And I must tell you, you're going to get, in regard to the reward, a highly coveted EABC mug. These are extremely valuable.
Can I put some vodka in it?
Yes.
There are a couple of, thank you. There are a couple of other items I just want to mention before we go. We're going to do a drawing for the, well, let's do that now. Let's have Cal take a ticket out of there.
It's wonderful. Not the money, not the money. Sorry, Tim.
I hope I don't get my ticket.
I'm also going to make a couple of introductions to you before we adjourn. Let's read the winner first.
Okay, big winner is 708822.
Last two numbers are 22. Take a look at your ticket. Any claimers? Oh, she got it.
It's not rigged. It's not rigged.
Thanks so much. Let me just introduce you to two special people here tonight. We've talked about this wonderful island. There's an island that is between Amelia Island and the mainland called Piney Island. We're fortunate enough to live on Piney Island, and we have two wonderful neighbors who are World War II vets sitting at the table here. And I'd first like to introduce you to our good friend Dick Hanley, Dick and June. Dick is a Pearl Harbor survivor. And he's only 3 years away from his century, so he has lived many good years. The other wonderful neighbor we have is our own Stan Brocklebank, and I try to get him to tell me stories about his past. The only stories he tells me after I've got a couple of the vodkas in him are about the French girls that he flirted with before he met his wonderful redhead. And he told me a story about he's a Canadian, so he served with the Canadian Army, I believe. And am I right in saying the Battle of the Bulge?
Yeah.
He served in the Battle of the Bulge, and he tells me about meeting up with the Limeys, who had carried tots of rum, and he figured out how to steal the rum from their his canister, and he filled his canister with rum. How he got away with it, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to share with the group?
I better not.
Have you got anything else you'd like to share with the group?
Say something.
It's always the wives that save the guys, right? Do you want to tell any story that you'd like to talk about,
He's a
Dick?
dull individual.
He's a dog.
Dull individual.
It couldn't be dull.
A dull
What about,
individual.
Lou, have you got any story you could share about Stan?
Well, I've been in Holland for months and months, living on a tent with no heat, no water, nothing to liberate the people. And when we were at the Holocaust Center not too long ago, there was a lady there that wanted to meet a Canadian soldier. She had been with her family in a house in Amsterdam, upstairs, hiding from the, you know what, for a number of years. And she hadn't been, having been on the ground. And the Canadians came in and liberated that group, that town, her area, and they gave her a chocolate bar. But she had waited all these years to find a Canadian soldier to say thank you.
Your home's a little bit better than that tent now, isn't it?
Quite a bit, yeah, quite a bit.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else got a World War II story to tell us? Well, thanks so much. And all right, thank you, everybody, and we appreciate you coming. We look forward to having you at the